We're also recording on this computer, so if you have to drop off early, if you came in late, I'm going to distribute that video to everybody that registered as well, and that way you can share that however you would like as well. My name is Caleb Talley, Director of Marketing and Events for the Startup Junkie Foundation. Like I said earlier, we really appreciate you for signing up and for attending this event with us today. For those of you who are not familiar with our organization, Startup Junkie is a high-impact, mission-driven nonprofit based in Northwest Arkansas that supports, inspires, and educates entrepreneurs and innovators by providing no-cost one-on-one consulting, events, workshops, things just like you're in here today, and access to capital and talent. We remove barriers for historically underserved populations by democratizing access to entrepreneurs and resources and providing strategic support to any individuals seeking to establish or grow their business. We're excited to have Jose with HubSpot for Startups with us. Jose's led some webinars for us in the past, and they're always fantastic, and we're super excited to have him back again today. Jose, without further ado, I'll let you take it away.
Thank you, Caleb, and thank you for having me. I'm such a big fan of Startup Junkie and how you're serving entrepreneurs in such varied ways. You're doing a great job. It's always a pleasure to be here. So last time we spoke about marketing, and this was a while ago. But today we're going to be talking more about sales, which is something I'm very passionate about. And there's a big reason for it, right? I started a company about 10 years ago, and it failed quickly, which is good, right? I didn't waste too much time on a bad business. But one of the reasons it failed is I was really excited about the business. I was avoiding sales because it was not in my nature. And I quickly realized that, it's not like you build it and people will come. You have to go out and sell and find customers. So I'm very passionate about this topic in the world of startups. So hopefully this will be helpful for you. If I had something like this when I was running my business, maybe would have gone better. So hopefully this is super valuable. I'm going to share my screen, and let's see here. Boom. Let me know if you can see my slides. Brilliant. All right. And then I'm going to open the chat here on parallel. So if you have comments or questions, please let me know on the chat. Just before we start, so one of the reasons we're doing this with Startup Junkie is actually a partner of HubSpot for startups. And what that means is we work together in figuring out what's the next event or workshop or education session we can run on that is valuable for entrepreneurs and founders. And another part of the partnership is if you're a member of Startup Junkie, you can actually access the HubSpot CRM platform at heavily discounted startup pricing. So I'm not going to go into what that is because it's not the topic of today. But if you're interested, you can go to hubspot.com/startups and you can learn more. Now, with that said, I really want to get started. I kind of spoke about my background a little bit, which, engineer turned entrepreneur, hated sales, failed because, didn't want to sell and learn I need to get better at sales. So I started my sales career 10 years ago. As soon as I closed the startup, I started a sales career, and I've been learning a lot in the last 10 years about sales. And lately, the last 3 years, more specifically on startup sales. So what we're going to be covering today is really, see here, what's going on. We're going to talk about sales process real quick, but really what we're going to focus on is the elements of an effective prospecting process, right? How do we build a prospecting infrastructure for our business? Not only the entire sales process, we're going to focus on that first part, which is how do we create net new opportunities for selling in our business? One of my learnings in my career has been that if you're good at generating new opportunities of sales, you're always going to be okay. And if you create quality opportunities for your business, you're going to be okay. You don't even need to be a great salesperson. You don't need to be a great sales closer. If you're creating a bunch of pipeline of good fit opportunities, you're going to be okay. You're always going to surpass your goals in sales. So with that said, I just want to take a quick moment to talk about a sales process, and we're talking about the sales of a B2B product or service, right? Something that has a process of not only selling but buying, right? It's not a transactional buy. You have to go through a process of understanding a problem, understanding a solution. And so if we have that context, that type of sale, one question for you on the chat, what do you think are, or what do you know, what have you learned so far are stages that are present in any sales process, any B2B sales process? What are some of the stages in those sales processes? On the chat, please. And I know some of you are like super smart, right? Like, yeah, prospecting is one, right? I know. What else? What else? Besides prospecting, right? The pitch. Oh, we're going to be talking about pitch, Morgan, a lot. And whether we should or not. Qualifying leads, right? Identifying. Oh, Bill has been reading about inbound sales and reading about HubSpot, I think. Closing, of course, asking for the sale. I've seen that. A lot of great salespeople, great sales process. You still have to ask for the sale, right? Even if you run a perfect sales process, you still need to, okay, are you going to buy? Are we going to get started? When do we get started? You need to ask for the sale. Engage, right? If you identify a lead, how do you engage with those leads? All very valid. So I'm going to share, and this is not a specific sales process, but these are 4 components that I believe should be in any sales process. It's identifying leads, identifying who you want to connect with, who you want to potentially sell to or work with. Then connecting with them, right? Like engaging with those leads. Then exploring. So exploring is about, once we connect with the type of leads we want to connect with, then how do we go into a deeper conversation to understand the context of their situation, right? Of the problem they need to solve, or how they want to approach solving it, and how they would go about enabling change in their organization so that they can move to, buying. So that's the explore stage. And then the advice stage is, once we have a good understanding of the organization, the goals of the organization, the problems they're facing, how can we start connecting the dots and start talking with our client about how to overcome the challenges so that they can get to their goal with our solution, with our help. So that's the advice stage. Now you could add at the end of this, as part of that advice stage, at the end of the advice stage, you actually would ask for the sale, you will close the deal. Right? Bill Seneca, right? Part of the qualifying is, do you have the capital to purchase my product or service? Very important, right? Now we've heard, probably some of you have heard in the past, of the concept of BANT, right? Budget, analysis, needs, and timeline. And budget is a big part of it, right? And that's part of understanding and identifying good fit leads for my business, right? Do they have the capital? Are they in the segment that can afford the type of services that I provide, right? So my wife has a business here. We run from home, and we have a very specific segment that we know can afford her services. Now she has competition that works or plays in a different segment of the market. We only work on a high-end segment of the market. So we know there are certain organizations and families we can't work with because we know traditionally they can't afford it. And that's part of qualifying. Ideally, you have a process to identify those things even before you pick up a phone or even before you send an email. So very important to, first of all, identify who's a good lead for your startup or for your business. And so with that said, why is it so important to spend time making sure that we're going to target only those leads who are a perfect fit for our business? On the chat, why do you think it is so important to only work with the most quality leads for your business? Morgan, I love it. Right? Morgan, how long have you been in sales? Right? Protect my time. I need to protect my time, right? Right? Time. You can't waste your time. You can't waste your prospect's time, right? It's the worst thing, right? If we both are in like 2-3 meetings and at the end we're like, yeah, we kind of knew from the beginning we were not going to work together, we both wasted time, right? And so we don't want to waste time. We don't want to waste our time for sure. We don't want to waste our prospects' time. I'll give you another reason a lot of people don't think about. Sometimes you will close a customer that is not a good fit for your business. Is that good or bad? You close a deal with a customer that is not a good fit for your business. Why is it bad? Well, we close a deal. It's generating cash flow, right? Why is it bad to close a bad customer or a bad fit customer for your business? Why is it bad? What could happen? Right? They're going to churn. They're going to leave. We're not going to solve their problem. They're going to be unprofitable, right? Who wants to run an unprofitable business? Raise your hand. Right? No one raised their hands. Right? Cool. So you don't want to have an unprofitable customer. You want to have a customer that is not going to last forever. And what happens with customers who are unprofitable and who don't last a long time? Do they give you good reviews or bad reviews? Right? Most likely bad reviews, right? So whatever you look at it is not going to be great. So it's very important to identify quality leads, not only to protect your time and to invest time with those who are going to close, but to avoid closing deals that are going to be hurtful for your business in the short and the long run. So if we know it is important to identify quality leads, then how do we define a quality lead for our business? What are some of the ingredients with which we can craft our ideal buyer profile? And you'll find this on the web, right? You can Google search building or crafting my ideal buyer profile. You'll find a bunch of ideas, really good ideas. Many companies will do a lot of work on the demographics, right? We need customers in this industry, on this company size, in these geographies, right? Values. Corinne, I love it, right? I had a partner who told me, I have a culture, I qualify my customers on their culture before I work with them. Now, this is a type of business that would have a long-term engagement with a client, like a marketing agency, right? They will work with the client potentially for many years. And they learned in the beginning of building their company that if they had a bad fit culture between the culture of their business and the culture of their client, it always ended up not great. So they actually qualify on values. So one way to identify or to build your ideal buyer profile is to have an idea of what's their culture in their organization. Very true, very true. Now, there are many things you can think about. There are 3 things that I think are very important to know when you're building or crafting your ideal buyer profile. And so these are who, right? And most of us do a great job at this, right? Who do we sell to? The more specific, the better, right? If I say, well, I help coach startup founders on sales. I'm a coach for startup founders. I'm a sales coach for startup founders. That's a decent who likes that? Who thinks it needs more specificity? Can I be more specific? Say like, yeah, but like not all founders are equal, right? Like different industries, different stages, different sales processes. Like how does that work? How could you be good at such a broad use case for sales processes and sales coaching? So I could be more specific. I could say, well, I'm a sales coach for founders of B2B SaaS businesses post-seed who are starting to build their sales teams because they're working on raising their Series A funding round. And that's way more specific. Now, just by adding more specificity to who I help, didn't you feel like I was more of an expert? Wow, you're very specific, right? It sounds like you're more knowledgeable because you're so focused on a very specific use case. It sounds like you might be better sales coaching than everyone that says, I'm a sales coach for startup founders, right? So the more specific you are when you define the who, the better for you. It makes it easy to prospect, and the better for your sales positioning statement later on, which we're going to talk on the next slide. The next thing, the next 2 things that are very useful to define for your business in terms of your ideal buyer are the goals of the people you're trying to help and the challenges that get in the way of their goals. If you have the who, what they're trying to achieve, and what's getting on their way, those 3 ingredients will help you a ton in connecting and creating a impactful and effective positioning statement that helps you both qualify well and also generate more opportunities and better engagement with prospects. Now, question, for those of you who have access to the chat on Zoom, who has something like this? or which of these ingredients are you missing in your ideal buyer profile? Do you have the who and the goals and the challenges, or are you missing some of these? Who doesn't have an ideal buyer profile? That's okay, right? It happens. Spoken with many companies that don't have one. On the chat. Right? The challenges. So how do you find the challenges in the way of goals? So that goes to a very important aspect of sales in general, and very specifically on prospecting and establishing an initial connection with prospects. And we're going to have, the next slide is going to have an idea of how to connect with prospects, but I'm going to tell you or share my thinking around those early stages in sales. The early stages in sales are not about what you sell. And how you get prospects excited and engaged in talking with you have nothing to do with your solution, right? So when I think about my value for prospects, I don't think about what I sell. I think about what are the problems that I can help solve, right? Regardless of my solution. And you're going to see in the next slide how we can do that to such an extent that we don't talk about ourselves at all. So how do you find those usual challenges? If you're early on with your startup, right, and you know the type of problem you're solving, you're a good way there, right? What's getting in the way is that problem. So what you might need is first understand what are the goals of this person. And one of the things that I've noticed many companies fail to do is they define their ideal buyer in terms of organizations. And, oh, I work with manufacturing companies in the Midwest. And what I found is more effective is to think about roles. So as an ideal buyer is a role. It's the marketing manager at a mid-market company in the US, right? It's the role itself. Once you think about the role, then you can start thinking or doing customer interviews. What is usually what that role's goal is in the organization, right? This person's goal in the organization with that role is. And then why can't they get there, right? That's how I get to challenges. So you have to talk with your ideal buyer persona and do customer interviews to get a better understanding of what those challenges are. Hopefully that answers the question a little bit, Daviani. So let me take this a step back. Here, right? So we define who we want to connect with, right? That's the identify stage. The next stage is how do we actually connect with those prospects? So one way to do it is pick up the phone and call and be like AT&T, hey, did you know we were offering long distance at 50% discount for people who live in your area because you've been a customer for 5 years. So that's one way of doing it. You pick up the phone or you pick up your email and you pitch out, right? And the idea of pitching out is you'll try with enough people where maybe some of them you caught them at the right time, right? So it's a spray and pray method. Now that may work in some industries and some more transactional environments. And if you really don't, you just already hate sales and you want to keep hating sales, you can do that. Or you can try connecting a different way. You can try connecting by starting by saying, here, I work with people like you who have these goals and they're usually getting these challenges, these problems are getting in their way. Is that you, right? If it's not you, we'll keep going. If it is you, maybe we should talk. And so here's the template that I've been using for years now and that I've coached people to use. The first part is the person, right? We work with startup founders like you. I work with owners of manufacturing companies like you. I work with restaurant owners like you, right? And the more specific, the better. And then you talk about their goals. That's the element number 2 is you talk about their goals. They're trying to do X, right? I work with restaurant owners like you who are trying to move, or they're working hard to move to a world of digital sales, selling online, not only selling to people who come into their shop. to generate an additional source of revenue or to deal with the challenges of the current pandemic, right? So these are the goals. And then I do a transition, right? I use an emotional word like frustration, right? But are frustrated because the challenges get in their way. Because even though they've invested a ton of money in their website, they've invested a ton of money in infrastructure for delivery, they still are not connecting with enough buyers to start doing online orders. Does that happen with you, right? Are you a restaurant owner who is trying to move to a more digital sales world or creating that additional revenue stream? You've invested a ton of money in your website and your digital assets, and you're still not connecting with your buyers, right? The pizzeria next to you is selling like a lot, and you're still selling zero, right? Does that happen to you, right? So that's the number 5 element. Does that happen to you? So if you build something like this for your startup or for your company with these 5 elements, and you start using it when you first reach out to someone, right? Either phone or email or LinkedIn, you're going to see a significant increase in engagement and responses back. I'm going to make a pause because I know I speak super fast and I'm very passionate about this. Any questions here? Has anyone tried something like this on the chat? Have you tried this, or do you have any questions? Lindsay has a question. All right, Lindsay, what's your question? Or yes, you have tried this. Let's go, Lindsay. When do you talk about pricing? Great question. Haven't tried it, but I will. When do you talk about pricing? And I think Lindsay also has a question. So I'll start with Corinne. When do you talk about pricing? All right, question on the chat. Who thinks we should talk about pricing right now on this positioning statement? Yes or no, we should talk about pricing. All right, we got a couple of not yet. All right. So I'll tell you what I'm trying to do with this first interaction. First of all, if I've done a decent job at defining my ideal buyer profile, I'm going to identify leads who are most likely not going to have a problem affording my solution, right? They're a good fit for the problem, they're a good fit for the solution, and they're a good fit for the price of my solution, right? So ideally, you're taking a lot of the bad fit because they can't afford leads even before you reach out to them. So that's one thing. The second thing is, my goal here is not to qualify you on price or authority. My objective right now, I have only one objective, is do you have a problem and can I help with that problem? That's it, right? If I can answer those 2 questions as yes, then I can move on. But I can't hope to accomplish all my qualification aspects or check marks with the first 2 minutes of conversation. My first 2 minutes of conversation is to prove I'm relevant for your life or not, right? We're both relevant for each other's life. You have a problem that I can help with. Do we agree on that? Let's move on, right? And then if we move on, then maybe we schedule a meeting, right? And I'll go to your office or you'll come to my office and we'll have a 1-hour meeting. We drink coffee while we chat, and we'll go deep into the problem and how we can help or understand better at depth your problem. All right, let me go back here to the questions. I was used to many people reaching out to me with something similar to this. The problem was that I received so many of these notes from people on LinkedIn and through work email every single day that it took a super compelling note to get a reaction from me. How do you break through that clutter, right? So you can, right, Jose, you're sharing this template with a bunch of people, right? And like, let's say there are hundreds of people using this template. So great question. We're gonna go through that. in the next few slides, because we need to answer a very important question when we're prospecting B2B, right? We're not talking about thousands of emails per day. This is not like e-commerce. We're not Amazon, right? We're trying to connect one-on-one with potential buyers. And so the one question that I always ask people to answer before they pick up the phone, before they write a LinkedIn email or an email is, why you, why now? Why am I reaching out to you? Why am I reaching out to you now? So this template is great, but why do I think this template is relevant to you? And why do I think that it applies to you? It's not only because you're a startup founder, right? There are some signals, and we're going to talk about that in the research area. There are some signals that make it very obvious that you most likely have the problem that I can help solve. So if I can answer the question, why you, why now? Then we move from the cold prospecting area to the more warm prospecting area, which is way more effective. So I may send this template to you, to Caleb today, because he did something, he posted something happened in his company, something happening in his industry where this communication right now is relevant, but for Alan, maybe it's not relevant today. So I need to wait for a trigger to be present. Oh, Ayush, you're in the trucking industry, and one of my example is actually in logistics. So maybe that it'll help make this visual. Right, I'm gonna move on. I know there are a lot of questions. Thank you for being engaged. I wanna move on, and then if we answer these questions as we go along, great. If we don't, we can also do a little bit of Q&A at the end. So I'm gonna go through this quick. Most of you know this, and if you don't, like, you'll have the list here. You can ask around, but basically the idea is we define who we want to connect with, right? We have a very good idea of our ideal buyer profile. Then we decide to reach out to them. We crafted what we're going to say in the first 30 seconds of interaction. And the 30 seconds could be the 30 seconds of the phone call or the first 3 lines of that email, right? And then we need to decide, well, where are we going to find those leads, right? Very important, right? HubSpot made a name. The first 10 years of HubSpot existence was all about, hey, we'll help you with our software generate inbound marketing so you create a ton of leads. The inbound marketing and marketing is definitely one way to generate leads for your business. These are other ways to generate leads for your business. So what's next, right? We then need to connect with the prospects. We know who we want to connect with, and we found them, and we know what we're going to say, but then how do we approach them? Right? It's not easy. It's not as easy as to just like, oh, I just pick up the phone, call someone, say this, and boom, I got a sale. Not that easy. So first thing is to go into that interaction with the right mentality, right? Your goal with the first stage, the first connection with a prospect, right, is not to sell. Your first goal is to establish an initial relationship, understand their challenges on a high level. Like you're not going to go into a rabbit hole and go in depth into either problems or solutions. You just need to understand, do they have a problem that I can help solve? And do they want to solve that problem, right? If they do and we can help, then we schedule our next conversation, right? We'll schedule a meeting, we'll pick a date, we'll pick a place, or maybe over Zoom, and then we'll have an in-depth conversation about the problem and understanding how we can start working together in solving it, right? So that's a schedule, what we call the exploratory call, the explore stage of our sales process. The goal of the connect call is connect with the people that have the problem and set up the next stage on our sales process. It's not to sell, it's not to pitch, it's not to deep dive into how you can help, right? Many people do this, many reps, many sales organizations do this. And what happens is you feel like you're moving super fast on your sales process, and it feels great while you're in that conversation. As soon as you hang up, what usually happens then is that you have these really long closing timelines, right? my learning in sales is if you qualify quick, you close slow. Now, if you qualify slow, you close quick. So this is the idea of having an initial conversation that doesn't go in depth, having a different conversation and time and place to go in depth, and then having that advice conversation. So again, number one thing you do not do on a connect call is sell. Now, I'm gonna jump over this one and this one. The summary of the last 3 slides is the hardest part about prospecting is picking up the phone and overcoming your fear of rejection, of people hanging up the phone or not responding to your email or getting angry at you. That's the biggest obstacle to great prospecting. And I'll give you an example. How many of you on the chat, how many of you have a reserved time every day to prospect new business? How many have reserved time on your calendar dedicated to prospecting every day of the week? Golden hour at the end of the day, Tyler. Every day, Tyler? Yes. Corinne, every day, prospecting. I love it, right? This is the number one thing you need to do. You need to put the biggest advice I would tell people when I was coaching. We were talking about and crafting together the positioning statement, talking about the process, which is going to come in the next few slides. The biggest difference in success in prospecting was when they actually listened and put 1 hour every day on their calendar. That's the leading action, right? If you do this, everything else follows, right? If you put time on your calendar, and it's annoying, right? It's like Will Ferrell with the cowbell, right? It's very annoying, right? But once you get into that routine of every day doing prospecting, right? 99 out of 100 people you ask, do you like prospecting? They will tell you no, right? 1 of every 100 will say, I love prospecting. It's the favorite part of my job is to call strangers who may hang up the phone on me or be disrespectful. It's the favorite part of my day, right? 1 of 100 will like that. You know, they have other issues to work with, but 99 of 100 of us don't like that. And so what we do with things we don't like is we don't do them. And we find excuses, or we find all the things that we like a little bit better, so that we spend time on those things, right? Email ghosting, right, Corinne? That fun? Is that fun when people email ghost you? I know you read it. I have HubSpot. I track email opens, right? Don't tell me you haven't seen it, right? You still have to be kind, empathetic when you're reaching out to prospects. So one thing then, put 1 hour on your calendar every day. Now, I've heard people say, well, that's 5 hours a week, so I may just do 5 hours on Friday afternoon. No, doesn't work, right? Doesn't work because you're not overcoming your tendency to avoid something that is painful. And so what you're doing is you're putting it at the time of the week you feel you have nothing better to do. And you have to switch that mentality, right? The most important thing you have to do for your business is to get new customers, right? It's not the only thing. There are many important things, but getting new customers is a very important thing. One of the most important things, if not the most, if you want to grow your business. So very important to do this. The next thing is, well, can't just reach out once. How many of you have reached out to prospects and never reached out a second time? Okay, raise your hand. Have you ever not reached out a second time? Right? Who always reaches out a second time? Nobody, right? Nobody reaches out a second time. Even if you do it most of the time, you don't always do it. I used to work with a sales rep in a marketing agency in Colombia, and very energetic individual, right? Very passionate. We crafted our positioning statement. Oh, we're going to talk about that, Corinne. Following up and pestering. And so he came up with like at least 100 leads. I was surprised, right? Wow, you found 100 leads. That's impressive. He spent the entire week prospecting, like identifying leads. And then, well, like we have an email, we crafted the email, we crafted the positioning statement if he reached out over a phone, because sometimes he will reach out over the phone, or LinkedIn, email. So we reached out, the messaging for the 3 channels. And so we met 2 weeks later, and it's like, Jose, you know what? It's not working. I don't know why it's not working. I sent an email or a phone call or an email on LinkedIn to 100 prospects, and only 2 responded. And I asked him, hey man, like what happened the second time you tried? What was the answer the second time? And he became quiet, right? Super quiet. The reason he became quiet is, well, like I haven't sent a second message, and that is a big problem, right? Most prospects won't respond the first time. And I know we've heard that a lot, but what I like about this slide is actually Harvard and InsideSales.com interviewed and studied hundreds of thousands of sales processes and started doing some stats, really cool stats about prospecting. And one thing they found is only 30%, that only 25% of reps try to connect with a prospect more than once, right? Only 25%. Only 12%, 15% try a third time, right? So very few reps in very few opportunities do they try to connect more than twice or 3 times. And on the other hand, what they found out is from the side of the prospect, how many times does it take to get someone's attention, right? If you're doing the right job prospecting to the right customers at the right time, how many times do they respond to that first outreach? And like less than 40%, like only a third will respond to the first attempt to connecting. But if you try it a second time, it would increase your odds by almost double, like 60%, more than half will respond. And if you try it a third time and a fourth time, you will get upwards to 80 or 90% of responses. So you have here a disconnect. And in my world, a disconnect is always an arbitrage opportunity. You need to try more than 3 or 4 times to really be successful at prospecting. And you have most of the sales reps not trying more than once. So what that means is if you are the rep, if you are the person who is trying 3 or 4 times to connect with your prospects, your likelihood of connecting with potential buyers versus your competition is like tenfold, right? It's significant, it's gigantic, the opportunity to beat your competition from a prospecting opportunity generation point of view by just trying to connect with prospects 2, 3, or 4 times. So how do we do it so that we're not a pester, right? As Corinne is asking. So here's what we've learned at HubSpot. Is how many touches and how frequently do we reach out to prospects. Now HubSpot, because we have a ton of transactions, we're a software company, so we have a ton of interactions, and we've been doing it for more than 15 years. We have the value of data, so we can get more granular, right? Like we know how many attempts do we need to do with an op in the small business segment, and we know how different that is in the enterprise level, right? We know in small business is 6 attempts, we know in the enterprise level is 15 attempts. It's just the nature of the beast in prospecting. But in general, like most businesses follow the following process that is effective. What we found is if you try to connect with prospects between 6 and 10 times, we call that touches because it's not necessarily days, it's touches, right? It could be 1 email is 1 touch, 1 phone call is 1 touch. So if I call you and then send you an email, those are 2 touches, right? So 6 to 10 calls or emails. And then how often, right? Like I send you an email and I called you today. Today is Tuesday. Well, if I don't get an answer today immediately, how soon should I try again? Right? So that is a big question. And sometimes I get asked, well, should I try the next day? Is that pestering? Is that too much? And the answer is yes, that is too much. every day is too much. Now, the other end of that is, well, should I try in a week, right? Is that too little? And the answer is yes, that's too little. If you let a whole week go by, you lose a little bit of that moment. Not only moment, that's not the word. You lose the recall effect. Like if I send you an email a week later, you kind of forget I had sent you that email a week before, because there's so many emails coming in. So what we found is the most effective time frame between rounds of trying to reach out to someone is 2 days. We call it the two-day follow-up technique. So if I call you and email you today, Tuesday, I'll try again on Thursday, right? And I'll try two channels every attempt. So every round, I'll try two. And so I'll do an email and a call today. 2 days later, I'll do a LinkedIn email and another call. And then 2 days later, so the Monday, I'll try two more, right? And so what happens is that increases significantly the likelihood of you getting a response. Will everybody respond? No. Will some people tell you, hey, unsubscribe me for your list? It will happen. It will happen less if you follow this process and if you also answer the question, why you, why now? Why am I reaching out to you, Wendy? Why am I reaching out to you now? Right? Ayush, right? Sometimes I see these emails, they're very obviously a part of a drip campaign, right? You have to personalize a little bit. You have to take an extra 30 seconds in crafting the first line of that email. Hey, I'm reaching out to you and I'm reaching out to you now because of this, right? Hey, I noticed that you X. And then I go into my connect call positioning statement. Corinne, sequence again. So here's what I do. Here's the exact one I instructed people to do is one call, one email, right? 2 days later, another call, another email. 2 days later, an LinkedIn email and either a call or an email. So always 2 channels. And then 2 days later, what I call the goodbye email. Now the goodbye email, one important thing is you're not trying to trick someone into responding to you. You're actually recognizing you've tried enough times to connect and there's a strong signal that they're not interested, right? So what you're saying is you're truly saying goodbye. You're saying, hey, I'm a professional. I don't want to enter into this spam, being a pester zone. So, you know, this is why I wanted to reach out, but it looks like it's not the time. I'll remove you from the list of people we're emailing. And, you know, maybe we'll connect 6 months from now or a year from now. Or if something happens, you know where to find me. Right? You're very genuinely saying goodbye. Now, do people respond a ton to that? Yes. They respond a ton to that because if you're actually relevant for their life, what they feel with each email you're sending is, well, there's going to be another one down the line. And I can always do it then. I can always do it then. When you say goodbye, you're removing the follow-ups, right? The expectation of a follow-up, the expectation of the opportunity is going to come knocking on my door a few days later and I can react then. So a lot of people, and there's a lot of psychology that goes into this, respond to the goodbye email. But the important thing is when you're writing it, you're not tricking people into responding to you. You genuinely mean, I'm not going to try more, right? It's not like you try the goodbye email and if they don't respond, then you send another email 2 days later. That would be terrible, right? So very important to do that. Thank you, Shan. I do like when a persistent sales rep, account manager, right? Oh, Ayush. They do that at HubSpot a lot. That's part of that personalization. Why you, why now, right? Let's say I'm HubSpot. I'm a HubSpot rep. And part of what I sell is a software CRM platform that allows you to do a bunch of stuff, including building your website in a way that converts leads to your business. So what I'll do is I'll go to your website and see, well, first of all, if you have a website and you have some elements that indicate to me, oh, this company is trying to generate leads from their website, right? They have call to action, they have forms, I've seen their social accounts, they have ads. They're trying to generate leads online. So that for me is a good signal of why you, why now. and I go into your website and I see you're trying something new, or you're doing something that I know probably not the best practice, or I know there's something missing that if you start doing that, you'll be more effective. So I'll send you a note and say, hey, you know, I've been looking at your website, I've been following you guys, and I noticed that you're trying to do this, blah, blah, blah. I know when you're trying to do that, right, your goals, I work with them whose goals are X, but are struggling with Y, right? And I'll give you a nugget of value, right? If you're a college or a university, I'll tell you something like, hey, I work with directors of admissions at universities who are trying to generate interest in applications for admissions from their website, right? But they struggle with, what they struggle with is they generate a ton of leads. The problem is not the volume of leads. What they struggle with is they can't really differentiate in their leads database from people who are just with curiosity trying to learn about the university from the actual people who are going to apply for admissions in the next 3 months or for the next cycle of enrollment. It's really hard for universities to distinguish the two. And what happens is your admissions team is overwhelmed with leads to follow up on, and they're basically playing a random game of, I'll call Wendy, she may be just a curious person, or she may be someone who's actually interested in enrolling in the next cycle. I don't know until I call them, right? And so what happens is the admissions team is overwhelmed with work and their close rates plummet, right? You have burnout, you have high rotation, and you're not really getting to the goals of admissions you established from the get-go. Does that happen to you? Now that's very specific, right? But if you're going through that, I assure you, you're going to respond, right? So very important to personalize as much as you can that outreach. Cool. So again, I said this before, book time on your calendar to do this. This is more on like the volume. This is more for like software or service companies. You want to try to, with that hour a day of prospecting, you want to be finding 2 or 3 leads every day, 2 net new leads every day. Now, depending on your industry, this may be more, or it may be a little bit less, especially if you're working with like government institutions, this will definitely be less. But for 80% of the types of companies that you may be running, 10 to 15 new leads per week is a good watermark to shoot for. And then you'll know, right? Am I getting to my goals? So I need to do more, or am I good with 10 to 15? And then research, as I mentioned before, I won't repeat it for like a 4th time, is how you differentiate from the cold callers is you are answering the question, why you, why now, by doing a little bit of research. I do take my time to look at that website, to see what's going on, what's missing, and record that personalized video to you, right? I take my time. You know when you receive my email that I took my time to understand what may be going on with you, and I understand that I may be actually relevant for you now, right? You're not a part of a drip campaign of 100 emails I sent today because I'm prospecting into the auto dealership industry, right? Nobody wants that. Right, I think I can skip the last part. I just make a quick comment on this because I want to go into Q&A. But one quick thing is, for those of you who have products or services in which you may interact with multiple people in an organization, multiple roles, just try to find out, when we're talking about ideal buyer, goals and challenges, right? You're thinking of roles. Goals and challenges change with roles. And what I mean by this is, I've seen this done everywhere and at HubSpot too, where especially newer reps will come in and have this connect call conversation, and they have the exact same conversation with the owner of the company or the marketing director or the director of sales. That's a big mistake, right? The thing is, at HubSpot is we think about growth. Like our solution is growth, revenue growth of a company, growth of a company. But the thing is, growth is different for the founder and for the marketing person and for the salesperson, right? So if I'm talking with a marketing person about growth, what they're thinking is, what's my lead generation quota? What are my lead generation channels? Which are becoming more expensive and less effective? Which are becoming more effective and less expensive? What's my cost of acquisition of lead? What's my lead quality? Is it going up or down? Right? That's how I measure growth. I'm not measuring growth on the point of sales team performance or percentage of deals closed or sales cycle length, right? Like the marketing director, it's not that they don't know, but they're not as most concerned with the deals are now taking 3 weeks to close instead of 2 weeks to close. That's the sales director concern when they're thinking and processing growth for their business, right? If my sales cycle is getting longer, it's going to be harder for me to get to my quota, or I'm going to need more leads. So if I'm thinking of growth in a company in which the sales cycle is getting longer, that is a growth problem. But that is a growth problem for the director of sales, not for the director of marketing. So depending on who you have on the phone or who you're sending the email to, be aware of different roles, process, solutions, and challenges for the same organization, very different, right? So I'll go through this too, because I really want to have like at least 5 minutes for questions. And I'll leave you with this checklist, which is a review of what we spoke about today and the key takeaways from today. The one thing I will highlight is put time for prospecting on your calendar. Lindsay, yes, we will. I will send you through Startup Junkie. I will send you a copy of the slide deck. Yes. Okay, I have a question from Corinne here. And by the way, we'll go into Q&A. But Corinne is asking, what if you messed along the process? Is it fixable? Yes, right? And I'll tell you what that means in my perspective. Messing along the process, for me, what it usually means is I moved forward in the sales process before I had to, right? I moved to negotiation stage, and then I realized I messed up having a clear understanding of the goals, or I messed up having a clear understanding of the decision-making process or the structure of the organization. Who's the decision maker? Who signed? Who doesn't sign? I made a mistake in understanding the real problem they want to solve or the priority of these problems. So usually for me, I mess up is I need to go back in the sales process. And what I will do, Corinne, is I'll call it out. People will appreciate it. Say something like, hey, Corinne, we're stuck in negotiations, but I realized I made a mistake. This is why I understood your problems were. But as we've moved forward, I've realized I really don't have a good grasp of X or Y, but I really don't know what Tyler's job is in the entire process or how he's affected by the entire process of what we're trying to achieve here. Do you mind if we talked this Wednesday and go a little bit back and hash that out before we move forward? They will say yes. Why wouldn't they, right? They're the ones paying. So I would say 100% of the time they will want to go back, right? You're the one who wants to move forward. They want to make it right. They want to make it fast. So you want to convey that sense that, no, I'm not the typical sales rep that needs to close by the 30th of April because I have a quota. No, I want to make sure I do it right? If that means you're going to buy in May, if that still aligns with your timeline for when you need to achieve your goals, that's okay by me, right? Have other deals. I am working 1 hour a day on generating pipelines. So I don't have to close you right now. I need to close one of the 15 deals that I have right now. All right, cool. Any other questions? That was a good one, Corinne. Yes, Tyler. So I know this is going to sound like, how do you call it when biased, right? It's going to sound biased, but yeah, how you keep track of this is you use a CRM, right? Where do I have it, right? You use a CRM. Now, you could do this as automated as possible or as manual as possible, but even like the most basic, like free CRM, like HubSpot has a free CRM, right? Even if you use the free version of a CRM, you can still keep track of your touches. So how one of my partners at HubSpot did it, he was using HubSpot CRM for his sales. How he did it is he was doing the 2-day follow-up because we work on it together. And so what he did is he had a filter on his CRM. So his CRM had all his contacts. And he had one field that is last activity, right? Or last contacted. And he would have a filter, show me all of my prospects who I have contacted more than 2 days ago, right? So if he contacted more than 2 days ago, he knew they were due for the next round of prospecting, right? So that's one way you keep track by using a CRM. The other way that is more advanced is Google. I think the name is a HubSpot name, but maybe there's a similar name for other CRMs. At the HubSpot CRM, we call it sequences. That's when you actually build a automation to execute on that process. So you'll say something like, email 1, send this email, and then if no response from the prospect, send the second email, or create an alert or a task that is sent to my email to send another email or to make a phone call. So you actually have the system act as like a robotic assistant that is always reminding you, hey, you're due for the next round of outreach. That's more on the automated side of things. So Google sales sequences, Tyler, and you'll find an idea of how you can keep track of all this, especially if you have large volume of leads. You need a CRM to help you with this. All right, I think we're out of time, but if you have more questions, if you want to talk more about sales, or if you just want to, you like me or whatever, connect with me on LinkedIn, Jose Martins HubSpot. I'm the only Jose Martins HubSpot in LinkedIn. Connect with me. Feel free to send me a message if you have any other questions. I'm always happy to connect on LinkedIn and continue the conversation. With that, I'm going to be very respectful of all y'all's time and finish on time.
Jose, thank you so much for this webinar. As always, it was fantastic. And just everybody who's still on with us, Jose will send me that slide deck. I will send it out to everybody along with a recording of the video to everybody that registered. Feel free to share that with colleagues. And we thank you again for being here today and look forward to seeing you at the next webinar.
Thank you all. Bye.